Yeah, let's give the speaker a big round of applause. All right, very good.
Susie can do it.
You know, you always need a clap starter in the audience, so somebody needs to be the designated clap starter too. I did that for years at work. I'd sit in the back, and if the speech was particularly dull or the audience wasn't getting it, oh yeah, and then everybody, oh, that's the cue. So, who has not been to one of my presentations? Oh, okay, all right, so there's safety in numbers. So I try to spare people the introducing myself, but sorry, you're gonna have to listen to it again.
That's okay.
Hey, thank you very much. Maybe I should give you a cue when they start clapping. So, my name is Joe Fahey. Originally from Belleville. I am not in Oregon or Janesville Fahey. I am not a Fitchburg Fahey. All right, those are all different breeds of cat. And so after college, I took off for the corporate world, and 45 years later, I survived. All right. And retired and grown up, and so in between I worked for several multinational companies. The last 20 years I was in charge of international marketing for a Japanese company, and so I traveled all over the world. And when I retired, I cut grass for the university for 2 summers, and man, there's got to be more to life than this. So, and they downgraded my tractor the second year. Wait, this is going nowhere. So I decided that after all that travel and thousands of pictures, that why don't I do something with it? Because there are people with curious minds. Not everybody, but there are people with curious minds who are interested about life outside our own bubble. Okay, so I decided I'm going to make presentations and see if anybody wants to hear them. So I now have 17 different presentations that I do. I've done about, I think I've done about 7 or 8. So I got 10 more to go, all right? And so then one day, I'm talking to my son, and he said, geez, why don't you podcast? I'm not going to podcast. I have 18 episodes on my podcast right now. So if you want to go to my website, you can hear my podcast about the same thing about traveling to different parts of the world. They're only 15 minutes, so I won't take too much of your life. And then my wife said, why don't you, as long as you've got nothing to do, why don't you write a book? So I wrote a book. It's right there. It's hasn't quite, not quite bestseller status yet, but we're working on it. And so anyway, so this is what I do, and I've given over 250 presentations in the area, and really enjoy, again, talking to people with curious minds. So thank you very much for being here. That being said, let's get started. So, who's been to Bali? How many times? That was kind of a trick question. Nobody goes to Bali, but I shouldn't say that. Bali is the classic, you can't get there from here. Okay. I'm not going to ask who knows where Bali is, because I couldn't answer that question much before I went there. Okay. So we've all heard about Bali, and it's a very exotic place. It's not quirky. It just is. It is what it is. Let's put it that way. But it's a beautiful place, and so let's talk about going to Bali. Now, I always start with geography. Where is Bali? All right, and Bali is part of Indonesia. All right, and so here's the Indonesian archipelago, and Southeast Asia. my wife and I were in Singapore visiting friends, and when we were setting up the trip, they said, hey, you really should go to Bali for the weekend, kind of thing. Because it's a 2-hour flight. And, okay, all right. So based on that recommendation, we went to Bali for the weekend. Now here's Indonesia itself. So here's the archipelago. See, Bali is an island in the archipelago, and it's right next to Java. All right. Bali itself has a population of about 4 million people. Right? It is size-wise, excuse me. Size-wise, it's about the size of Delaware. Okay, and Indonesia is made up of 18,000 islands, of which 6,000 islands are populated. Okay. So that gives you a little sense of what we're talking about. So you've probably heard of Sumatra and Borneo, Papua, Java. Those are all the larger islands in Indonesia. Now, history of Bali. Bali was first mentioned, the first recorded mention was from Marco Polo. So, what was that? Like 12th century, 15th century, somewhere like that. The first Europeans to go there were the Dutch, and that was in 1597. I know you're very pro-Dutch. So 1597, the Dutch go and kind of, they discovered Borneo. Well, not excuse me, Borneo, but Bali and Indonesia. Well, it's been there all along. It's just the first Europeans to get there. So they claim that as a Dutch colony. Now, the native Balinese, they had a king, and once the Dutch came, they started trading. Well, the only thing they had to trade was slaves. And so they would enslave orphans, widows, criminals, enemy of the state. And so they would trade with the Dutch, their slaves, and they had no money. So in return, the king was paid in opium. Okay, interesting system. So the Dutch East India Company. So it was a corporate thing, more so than the country. So the Dutch East India Company settled, European style, and so Indonesia was known as the Dutch East Indies because of the Dutch East India Company. All right. And in 1949, they got their independence from the Netherlands. And in 1958, Bali became a province. Okay, so 1958, I mean, that's not all that long ago. Okay. So that's the most recent history of Bali. Now, one other comment about Bali is they have a pretty famous volcano, Mount Gung. By the way, I'm going to be attempting a lot of Balinese here, and so it may be a struggle. Anyway, Mount Gung, that one's pretty easy. Erupted in 1963, killed 1,000 people. Erupted again in 2017. So it's relatively active. So, on to Bali. And as I mentioned, it was kind of a excursion from our visit to Singapore. And we get to the airport, and I see this sign. And I thought, oh no. G20, they have an annual meeting of the 20 top economies in the world, and they meet somewhere and talk about the economic status of their countries, and so it's a big meeting. And I thought, oh, I hope that isn't right now. Well, we missed it. It was the previous week. The signs were still up. Oh, that was scary, because you need all the security and all the, I mean, you just don't want to deal with it, especially when you go to a place like Bali. You know, that's not what you had in mind. Anyway, so we just missed it. So, standing in the airport and looking out across the runway, and I thought, what is that? You know, it didn't move. At first I thought it was like a fire or something, but it wasn't moving. And so I had to look it up, and then say, it's the largest statue in Indonesia. It's 400 feet high. It's going to be 40 stories of a Hindu god. So it is gigantic. It seems a little bit like overkill, but okay. So anyway, that was on the horizon. So we're at the airport, and we're going to check in at the hotel. Now, they said, okay, we'll pick you up at the hotel, or at the airport. Us and thousands of other people. It took a long time to find a sign with my name on it.
Oh my.
So that was my first challenge. Not too bad. Ultimately, we found our way to the hotel. Now, as with many things in Bali, the reception desk, was kind of outside. I mean, there's a shelter, but the weather's always the same. So, you know, why not? So we check in, and part of the check-in process is one of the porter goes over and hits the gong. Now the gong, for those of you who go to theater, means the start of the program. Okay, that's why they hit the gong. So he hit the gong for us because we're starting our program there at the hotel. Now I explained to him, listen, we've come halfway across the world. Can I get 2 gongs? So he double gonged me. They're very accommodating with the gong. So here's our hotel room, and I have to explain this. When we were setting up the trip, I went on to Travelocity to see, okay, what do they have for hotels, and what are we looking at? And I started looking at hotels, and we were going to be there 3 nights, and it was one was like $100 or $150. I don't know, that's not terrible. And then I started reading the fine print. That was for 3 nights. Okay. So I told my wife, we're going for the gusto here. So we booked a hotel. It's right on the beach. That's the one at double gong. But so this hotel room, it has a courtyard, and this is the outer wall to get into the room. And the wall is made of coral and seashells, and it has a very small door to get in. Now this is the foyer or the porch of our room, but there's a courtyard inside. And so here's a view from inside out. And so you've got this wooden door to get into our courtyard, and there's the security system. So felt very secure. And to get into the room, well, there's the door lock. So and the doors are very short, so you got to kind of squat to get through. We're kind of small people, but it was fabulous. It had outdoor shower. Very cool. It was really neat. So after checking in, we thought we'd take a walk along the beach, and there's a sidewalk that you could follow for quite a ways. So we walked along the beach, and we passed this house that's right on the beach, and noticed their living room, that's all outdoor. They don't need a wall. I mean,
No bugs.
no bugs, no crime. They're pretty trusting. Temperature's fine. Not too worried about animals or critters. So, I mean, this is a beautiful house and it had thatched roof. I mean, it's just, it just struck me as very, very unique. And so you walk along and there's all these vendors. She's selling rice balls. And here's another vendor that's going to set up down the sidewalk. And this picture kind of says it all. You've got a couple really nice boats, and you have a guy who's fishing in this boat, and he has a sheet of plastic for a sail. You know, it shows you the two extremes that you have there, you kind of have and have not. So, and this is Java, by the way. So it's not too far away. And this is our first reminder, or first thing that told us that Bali is very religious. And I'm going to get into that in a bit. But you see shrines, and people are very conscientious of deity and very thankful, and it's just a very interesting culture they have. So here's a shrine that's right on the beach, and you can see it's made of coral and shells, and this person is leaving an offering, and we'll get into that. Meanwhile, we had our own offering, and so there was a restaurant right on the beach, so we sat back and had a great view, and 2 beers on the beach were $3. And so the costs there are extraordinarily low. It was pretty amazing. Now, transportation, 4 million people, and they have 2.5 million scooters for 4 million people. And as you can see, it's safety first. They're very safety conscious. But that, you know, so here's a family of 3. That is not my personal record. My personal record is in Mexico, where I saw a family of 5 on a very small motorcycle. That was exciting. But, so, the streets are just scooters everywhere. And I looked up the statistics. 1,500 people die annually on scooters, and 12,000 are injured. So, and I'll show you why. This is obviously sped up, but they are just, traffic there is just nuts. And they're weaving in and out, and you know, it was hard to just watch. Oh, much worse than Europe. This is worse than Boston. Anyway, so it's yeah, a lot of scooters, but you know, you're at your own risk riding these things. So that's how you get around Bali. Now, we had a guy with a van take us around for a whole day, and it was really nice. So I got to sit up in front and view this firsthand. Now, at the hotel, we had the opportunity to experience Balinese dance. And Balinese dance is very unique, and it is a thing unto itself. It's religious in basis. In fact, it was only allowed in temples until not too long ago because the tourists want to see it. So they changed it so that they reduced the religious symbolism. But still, the dance tells a story. And when you watch them dance, you see the focus on the head and the facial expression and the hand placement. and finger placement and angles of legs and arms. It's just an incredible thing to watch. Now, while they're dancing, they have gamelan is the music that plays for the dance, and it's a combination of, you have flute and strings, and they have these, they're called gambangs, and gambangs are bamboo, right, of different lengths, and then they use tuss to, as a mallet, to play the gambons. So here's a short clip of Balinese dance. I'm not getting the music, unfortunately. So it's, and I'm sorry, you don't have sound set up, but you can hear the flute. It's kind of almost haunting music, but the dance itself is amazing. And we were watching a class. They teach children to do the Balinese dance, and they were kids of different age. And there was a boy who was probably about this tall. He got it. He was getting the moves down, and there were a bunch of little girls, and they were kind of all over the place. But he really understood the moves. So that was kind of fun to watch.
Did you have any bells or sounds or anything with their costume?
No. Okay. Next is Hinduism, and now, I have to admit, I made a huge mistake. I didn't greet you properly. I should have greeted you with Swaziastu. Okay. I'll get into that, but that is to bow your head and fold your hands. And that is everywhere. Okay. And so this folding your hands, I mean, the waiters come, and when they talk to you, they fold their hands. It's a gesture of thanks, of acknowledgement, of very positive attributes. Okay, it's positive energy. Now, the hands have to be up, not out. Okay, so that's very important. Now, Hinduism is very big in Bali. 87% of the population is Hindu. But it's different than Hindu in India. Hinduism in Bali is not as severe as it is in India. Okay? They do have a caste system, and there are 4 levels in Bali. And it's the priests, the leaders, the skilled and unskilled. Okay? So there's four levels in the caste system. In India, you've got the untouchables. Okay? They don't have that problem. In fact, in Bali, you cannot make decisions based on a person's caste. It's not allowed. So it's a much gentler form of Hinduism. And another difference is they only believe in one God, whereas in India there are multiple gods. So it's kind of an offshoot, but it's still Hindu. And what's kind of peculiar is that Bali is so predominantly Hindu, and the rest of the country is Muslim. So they're just literally an island of religion versus the rest of the country. Now, what you see everywhere, and this is, it's it's kind of fascinating. They are so thankful that they create these baskets, and you see about the size of it. They're made out of palm leaves or banana leaves, and they fill them with flowers and money, or salt, or food, and incense, and these are offerings to God. And you see them all over. They're on the, this was on the sidewalk with some, offered some water for God along with it. Here or two offered him a Ritz cracker. Okay. And they always have incense, so it's burning and it's part of the offering. We were at a restaurant that had an open buffet, and then the restaurant put a offering out. And here's a close-up of it. And here's some food, and again, flowers, and it's just an amazing tradition that they have, and you see it everywhere. Apparently God smokes. Hey, he's God, he can do whatever he wants. But occasionally you'd see, now he has incense here, so I'm not sure exactly what the cigarette is for, but hey, who am I to say? Now, the one thing about Bali is there are temples everywhere. And again, this is part of being a very religious culture. So this is a small temple that I came across, and there's something caught my eye here that I thought was a little peculiar. And it's a swastika, and that's what it's called, the swastika. Does anybody know what the swastika means? Good luck. Good luck. Peace. Peace. That's why the greeting is Om Swastiastu. Swastiastu, which is from the swastika. And it means peace. It is the oldest religious symbol, and yet it has been transformed for us. It's the irony is pretty deep. So you see a lot of the swastika on temples.
Do they call them the
Swastika. Yeah. So this is Batu Belong, and it's a temple that's out in the water. Now there are 7 temples that are out in the water, and they're spaced around the island, theoretically, so they could see each other. I don't know how that particularly works, but the guide was telling us it's Batu Belong, which means hole in the rock. And we looked at it and said, what do you mean hole in the rock? And he tried to explain it, and he just, okay, whatever. So we started walking down the beach. Oh, you mean that hole? Okay, I'm a little slow on the uptake. Incredibly beautiful, okay? And there is a freshwater spring. Now, how that works is way beyond me. I've taken some geology classes, but I have no idea how you can have a freshwater spring on this thing. But it's considered holy water, as you can imagine. So this is one of the famous temples. This is kind of a lot, and you hear about this quite a bit. And it's when the tide is in, so you can't get there. I mean, you could, but it'd be pretty wet. And so this is a beautiful thing. You can't go into the temples, so you can only adore them from a distance. So tide was in when we were there. But the thing about Tanah Lot is that it's guarded by poisonous sea snakes. But there are some people that for some reason, I mean, they're snake charmers, and they're able to do whatever he's doing. So, kind of an interesting concept. We didn't see this because the tide was in, but yeah, those are poisonous sea snakes. So don't mess with Tanah Lot. I mean, that's the bottom line. Now this is also something that you see a lot of. These are called split gates. And the mystical explanation of a split gate is that it's a portal from the physical to the spiritual. Now, what I found is walking through, it was physical on both sides. So, wasn't able to experience the spiritual by going through it, but it is representative of the folded hands. Okay, so that's what it represents. And you see a lot of split gates throughout Bali. Now, took me a while to figure out what this was. And this is the civil defense system. In that, see up here? Those are hollow logs. So that when there's danger coming, someone goes up there and just beats these hollow logs so that everybody can hear it. So that's, we just have sirens that go off every Tuesday at noon. So this is Ulan Danu, and this is up in the mountains. And so this is probably also the most famous of the temples in Bali. So it's offshore in a lake, in a mountain lake, and it's gorgeous. And again, you can't go into temples, so you can only appreciate them from outside. Now, there was one temple that we could go into, and this was Bajwan. And so we're going to go into the temple, and all of a sudden the people who were working there were kind of grabbing at me, and you know, when you're traveling, you're so, people, sometimes you just don't want to be messed with. Well, so I couldn't figure out what was going on. Well, they were trying to put a sarong on me. And I was just kind of fighting them off, and okay, finally I figured out what they were doing. We can't go in with bare knees. So we had to wear, they were putting a sarong on us so that we could go into the temple. All right. This is, you know, I try not to be a bad tourist, and I kind of was there. Just, no. So anyway, so it was pretty cool being able to go into a temple. And we watched this guy paint this door. It's just gorgeous. So just a sample of their art. Now, as with all places, there are clip joints. And so when you hire a driver for the day, you know he's got a side hustle saying, hey, you bring the touristas here and we'll give you a lot of stuff. So, okay, I know the game. It's not that bad. You just kind of put up with it, okay? So, Indonesia is one of the top 5 producers of coffee in the world. Right, so coffee's a big deal. Anybody know what luwak coffee is? Okay. Yeah, okay. You'll find out soon enough. I'm not a coffee drinker, and after this, I'll never be a coffee drinker. So anyway, we're at this coffee plantation, and I do a different presentation on South America. The flavor of coffee is based on the elevation at which it's grown. And so this is the higher altitude, Sumatra, Java, And so it's kind of more flavorful coffee. So that's just very refreshing. So, so we go there, and we know this is a clip joint. And, I mean, I've been to a lot of coffee plantations, but anyway, so we're there. And this is the owner's daughter. She's about 4.5 feet tall. Just really cute. Her English was good. She was really good at her job. Okay? So she was kind of fun to hang around with. And so we had our picture taken in the scenic location. Okay? I don't get it, personally. But, anybody know what these animals are? Civets. Civets. They're civets. And civets are where luwak coffee comes from. Now, they had a civet in a cage, but the cage only had 3 sides. He knew this was a good deal. He wasn't going anywhere. In fact, I think he was making some coffee at that very moment. So luwak coffee is coffee beans that have been eaten by a civet, and they get partially digested, and then people go out and pick up their poop, and it's full of these coffee beans, partially digested coffee beans. And apparently that's a big deal. With flavor, I don't even go there. So here is the raw luwak coffee, and here's after somebody went through and mined. Anyway, okay, so you get my drift. Luwak coffee. There's farmed and there is natural. So if it's farmed, when I looked it up, it was like, $50 a pound, something like that. But if it's natural, where somebody has to go out in the woods and find it, now you're talking like $500 a pound. So you really gotta love this stuff. Anyway, I'm not a coffee drinker, so that was luwak coffee. And then we walked by this hive of bees. These are bees with no stingers. Never seen that before. So that's just kind of a curiosity. So anyway, we didn't buy any coffee. And so the guide said, okay, now to end the day, I'm going to take you to see great artisans in wood, gold, and silver. So we first go to the artisans for wood. And it's these guys just kind of pounding on wood. And you go inside and they had incredibly gorgeous carvings. I know darn well these guys didn't do it. But that's part of the clip joint thing, where they, these are local art, and they cost a lot, especially for Bali, where beer is $1.50 each. So these guys were like stage props. I think they were making doorstops and bird feeders. Anyway, so I actually did buy a piece of carving because it was gorgeous. So then the driver said, now we are going to see gold and silver artisans. And I said, no more artisans, we're done. And he was good about it. He was good about it. So that was the end of the clip joints for that day. Now, because Bali is so mountainous, they have a lot of rice terraces. And it's really gorgeous, to see the hillsides with all the terraces on them. And so, does anybody know why rice is grown in water? Good question.
Well, it's man-made.
It's because weeds can't grow in water. rice does not need water to grow. So they flood the paddies, that's their way to get rid of weeds. So, so with these, all these terraces, you know, they have ways to flood them and then drain them. Now, so as we drove around the countryside, we were able to see the various stages of rice production. And because the weather is always the same, I thought it was interesting that you saw some green rice and some rice being harvested. There are different phases of growth. So I guess it doesn't matter when you plant it. So, so they go out in the field and they cut it in bundles, and then this is the thrashing where they just beat it against this curved piece of wood, and they're knocking off all the husk onto a tarp, and then from the tarp you throw it up in the air to get rid of the husk. So that's the Balinese manual way of harvesting rice. Now, this place is going to the dogs. There are dogs everywhere. And I went online to see how many dogs are there in Bali. 700,000 feral dogs. That's, you know, that's one for every 6 people. And there's one thing that feral dogs are really good at, that's making more feral dogs. Now, these dogs, in this case, they like to dig in the sand where it's cooler, and just sit in the hole they just dug. But they are everywhere. And they're clearly not doing anything about it. Right? You can't be too feral. But this made me think about it when I was a kid. Remember the dog catcher? And you know, whether it's the Three Stooges or whatever old movie you're watching, there was always the dog catcher. And I never thought about, why do you have a dog catcher? Well, you end up with a ton of feral dogs if you don't. You know, now we have animal control, and there's lots of different names, but the fact is you need to control the feral population, and they don't, and it's absolutely exploding. Now, I want to end this on there's trouble in paradise. And we went there in 2022. Now, the light blue lines, I know you feel like you're in class right now, but the light blue bars are foreign travelers, foreign visitors, tourists, okay? And it was up to 6.3 million in 2019, and we have the pandemic, and it went down to 0 in 2021. So when we were there, it was 2.2 million, and it was wonderful. Okay, it wasn't overcrowded. It just seemed a good number of people. It quickly jumped back up to 6.3 last year. 2025, it was over 7 million. Bali has become this place to go, and which is okay. I mean, over-tourism is an issue all over the world. But now this is an example. This is a holy cleansing of the soul and cleansing of the water. I can't remember the name of this process, but tourists are allowed to do it. Under certain, first of all, women have to wear this green sarong, and they can go in, and if you respectfully do the ceremony, then it's permitted. Unfortunately, it's just out of control. And how many green sarongs do you see in there? Like, not many. And so the problem is not only there's too many tourists, but they're disrespectful. And that's one of the things I talk about in my book is that when you travel, be respectful, please. And you know, I call this when in Rome, but I use that a lot. When in Rome, do as the Romans. You know, there's truth and beauty to that. Well, it's a problem. And the disrespect is just really a problem. Now, you know, first of all, she's not properly dressed, and it's rude to take pictures of people in Bali without their permission, especially in religious ceremony. And so this is just an example of rude behavior, and the result is that the system can't handle, the infrastructure can't handle all these people. And so you get all this trash, and they just, they don't have the ability, like, you know, with places in Europe or with stronger economies who can build infrastructure. They don't have that. And so this was a headline from the Washington Post. And Bali is absolutely fed up with all these tourists and disrespect. And they don't know what to do about it. So one of the things they did was, starting last year, they instituted a tourist tax. They generate some money and maybe discourage some people. The tax is $10. They didn't ask my opinion. I would have made it a lot higher, but I mean, that's a scale that they work out. You know, and for them, $10 is a lot. For people going there, $10 is nothing. So I'm thinking that's not going to work so well. So, you know, here's they're trying to educate tourists on the do's and the don'ts, which I think is great now. Tourists are famous for not paying attention. But they're saying, dress respectfully, especially around temples and villages. Ask permission before taking pictures. Support local businesses. Learn a few Balinese or Indonesian phrases, like swastiastu. You know, that goes a long way. See, I was rude, I didn't do it at the beginning. Participate in the culture. Don't just go for the beach and take your water bottle and then leave it there. You know, that's not, it's, in my travels, I have found it amazing that so many people don't care about the local culture. You know, they think it's like going to Missouri. So it's a problem for them. And then they give a whole list of just don't do these things. You know, just point it, don't point. Okay, I can do that. So anyway, Bali is I wouldn't say they're suffering, but they're really struggling with all the over-tourism. We read about that in Barcelona and Venice, and there are all kinds of places where they don't know what to do with the over-tourism. And I bet you anything, Venice charges more than $10 a day. Yeah.
So your graph had domestic as well as foreign. Domestic to the rest of Indonesia?
I'm not sure what the definition is. That would be my guess.
And therefore, since that's highly Muslim, all of those tourists are the Muslims, and I would imagine there may be some conflict there?
I don't think so. I think it's respectful of each other's beliefs. I don't think that's problematic. I'm not aware that it's problematic. So Bali is an incredible place. It is on the exact opposite side of the world. To get there, we flew east all the way around the world. So we flew from Chicago to Istanbul to Singapore, and then from Singapore to San Francisco and back to Chicago. So it was an around the world trip. But that's a lot of airtime. And we also contracted COVID on the ground. The guy in seat 17A, I know it was him. But Bali is a place which very few of us had the opportunity to go to, because literally you can't get there from here. But it was a cultural and a physical experience that I'll appreciate forever. Any questions about Bali?
Those little offerings that are all over, like on the sidewalk, do they just stay there forever until they picked up? Or?
One of the pictures I showed had one that was dried up right next to it. It was kind of subtle. So I think they let it dry out, and then somebody comes and cleans it up. Because you don't see a lot of them hanging around. And I don't know if I should have pointed this out. On the picture with the snakes, there was probably a dozen baskets sitting on the rock above it. So those were offerings to the sea snakes. Yeah.
So when you showed the scooters, it looked like the streets were pretty clean, but then the beach is like not.
You know, the beach picture it's a shot picture. No, that's I would put that in this has happened. It's not all the time. Whereas what I showed you is more traditional or standard. Now, keep in mind, when we were there was no tourism the year before. And then we're there and it's very low. So I don't know what the day-to-day status is, because we're there at just the perfect time. Yeah. I find that. It was right at the end of COVID. Yeah. So the guy who filmed us was wearing a mask. We saw some masks and some of his pictures. So we were just on the downside of the pandemic.
These people, are they playing instruments on the rock, or are they honoring something?
I'm thinking that she's taking a picture. I think they're taking pictures of the sunset.
I don't know if you took that or.
No, I did not. But I thought it was a nice shot to just encapsulate, the beauty of Bali. Oh, it's fabulous. Yes?
In respect to the temples, with my experience in Thailand, it was also you were required to remove your shoes as well as, body coverings, otherwise you weren't allowed to enter. Do they require you to take your shoes off there?
We did not. Now, we went into the temple grounds. See, most of the temples, there's a gate, and you can't even get close to it. Here, we were able to go onto the grounds. We could not go into the temple itself. So I think that's what you're referring to. And so, no, I wore red ball flyers.
How crowded was it? I mean, if there's 4 million people there, I'm just curious if they're all in pretty tight quarters.
In places, down by the beach, it wasn't. If you go into town, where the lower socioeconomic sections are, it's pretty tight in there. But it's also very, very mountainous and rural. So, yeah, in the towns, it's very crowded, but it's very easy to get out. Go out into the mountains. So Yes and no. That's not a very good answer.
Are these people employed some way, other than rice farming?
Tourism is a big part of the economy there. So, that's the old double-edged sword. I once, just last year, I was in Alaska, and we were in Juneau, and I was talking to one of the shop owners, and with these shops, some of them would have a sign that would say, Alaskan owned. Because a lot of the shops are owned by the cruise ship lines. They're competing with the locals. And so I walked into one of the stores that was Alaskan owned, talked to her about that. And she said, when the cruise ship comes in, yeah, we have a lot of sales. But when the cruise ship comes in, yeah, the town is just overrun with tourists. And so it's a love-hate relationship, and they become dependent on the cruise ships coming. So it's kind of like this. They're dependent on the tourism. But there's a social cost. There's a serious cost to tourism. And that's why a place like Barcelona, they're over it. They're just over it. Pardon me? Well, they're rude. Yeah. They scoop guns out. Yeah. Oh,
They feel good in their day.
Well.
No wonder everybody goes there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Barcelona, they're a different breed of cat. But that place, as much as anyone, and Venice is getting that way too. They're not particularly welcoming to tourists. Yes?
I don't know if you said this or not, but what is the size of Bali as compared to one or two of our states or?
It's the size of Delaware.
Delaware.
Yeah.
But it's surrounded by water, but it's
Right. Thank you very much for coming. It's always a pleasure.